When the human mind knows itself, you get the temples and all the museums and the music and art and beauty in every form, human beauty. And when the human mind doesn't know itself, you get the Korean War, and you get the World War II, and you get the killing fields of Cambodia, and you get Rwanda, and you get all sorts of atrocities. They're all done by human beings. When they don't know who they are, they kill each other. We kill each other. When we know who we are, we can move in the direction of celebrating each other and optimizing beauty and well-being and love, and minimizing hatred and greed and delusion. And that's a kind of meditative practice, moment by moment by moment, but it really needs to enter into the mainstream of governing, whether it's the Korean government or the US government or the UN or anything like that. And you know, more and more diplomats are practicing mindfulness nowadays. It's really quite beautiful. More and more people are using mindfulness to understand sustainability and the future of the planet. So it's very hopeful.
And from 필리카플로, 틱략한 숭산 스님, where there are any difference in their teaching styles or content, who has personally influenced you the most? Do you see any pros and cons in Zen, Vipassana, or Tibetan Buddhism? I have traveled with 숭산 스님 to Mount Kumgang in North Korea.
You did?
Yeah. 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I also interviewed Tignakham in Prambly, France. Yeah, I think I heard that 숭산 스님 officiated at your wedding. Is that true?
Yes, that's
yes,
true.
That's true. Oh.
Yeah, that's true. And it was very beautiful. And the wedding vows were, I vow to, I don't remember exactly, but I vow to enter into this relationship for the sake of all beings, which is very beautiful. And there were only 4 people there, Sansanim, me and my wife, Myla, and Larry Rosenberg. Sansanim wanted to have a big Korean wedding. And I said, no, we don't want a big wedding. We just want 4 people. The 2 of us. Larry Rosenberg was my Dharma brother and very close to Sansanim as well, who lived in Korea for more than a year with Sansanim at Wagesa. And then Sungsan himself. Yeah. I also learned, although I never met him personally, but Krishnamurti was a big influence on me. You're saying, were there any differences between their teaching styles? Yes, of course. They were Philip Kapleau and Thich Nhat Hanh and Sungsan. They were all very different. But that's what a student needs, is to see that there are many doors into the Dharma, but the Dharma is one room, so it doesn't matter which door you come in. The important thing is to enter the room. And that's really all I have to say about that. But it's wonderful that you traveled with him and that you met Thich Nhat Hanh in Plum Village. You know, he was like a very, very. They were all incredibly beautiful men in their time. Harvard University just opened a Thich Nhat Hanh Center for Mindfulness. Do you know that? Harvard University, Thich Nhat Hanh Center for Mindfulness. So there are more and more centers for mindfulness in universities and medical centers around the world. 50 years ago, that would have been considered impossible. Never, ever will happen. And now it's happening. So it's like a koan. There's something interesting here. What does this mean for modern university education and for research and for human development? It really is time for the Dharma to come out of the monastery in a new way, especially with this digital age that we're already in, with ChatGPT and generalized AI, AGI, and so forth. That the stakes are very high for us to discover our analog beauty and what it means to be human before the machines take over completely. Yeah, and that's a very serious possibility. We don't know what the future is going to happen, but the world is changing at an unbelievably rapid rate, and that may be why all the children are depressed and anxious. And where do I belong? And what is worth learning in school? And all of those kinds of things. So we need to find a new meaning in this new world that we're creating. And so there's no one person that has, you know, the full story. So whether it's Krishnamurti or Thich Nhat Hanh or Philip Kapleau or the Dalai Lama or whoever you want to name, Pema Chodron, all sorts of wonderful teachers in all these different traditions. Desmond Tutu, for instance, you know, Bishop Desmond Tutu, Archbishop. These are all everybody doing their best to bring peace to the world, to bring wakefulness to the world, to bring compassion to the world. So I don't think of MBSR or myself as being special in any way, but just one more wave on the ocean. Hi, goodbye. And lots of other waves coming up, including children, grandchildren, everything else. One other thing I would say is that it's very important not to be parochial in one's view. Parochial meaning, you know, very narrow, like, you know, this is like a Christian view or a Catholic view or a Buddhist view. All of these are just views. And we need to keep the big mind, the biggest possible view, and not make it into one more, you know, story of me. So that's really important at this moment in time, is to not fall into some false narrative about where people become true believers, you know, about anything, including MBSR. You know, we don't need more true believers and more fanatics who think my way is the only way, my view is the only way, my view is the only view. We need people who are much more inclusive and understand that every wave on the ocean looks different, but the ocean itself is all H2O, it's like water. And it has different streams and different currents, and we need to respect them because, you know, they're important and they can help you or they can also kill you. And so it's very, very powerful forces that we're working with when we talk about investigating the human mind and the human heart. And when the human mind knows itself, you get the temples and all the museums and the music and art and beauty in every form, human beauty. And when the human mind doesn't know itself, you get the Korean War, and you get the World War II, and you get the killing fields of Cambodia, and you get Rwanda, and you get all sorts of atrocities. They're all done by human beings. When they don't know who they are, they kill each other. We kill each other. When we know who we are, we can move in the direction of celebrating each other and optimizing beauty and well-being and love and minimizing hatred and greed and delusion. And that's a kind of meditative practice, moment by moment by moment, but it really needs to enter into the mainstream of governing, whether it's the Korean government or the US government or the UN or anything like that. And you know, more and more diplomats are practicing mindfulness nowadays. It's really quite beautiful. In various embassies all around the world, more and more diplomats are moving into mindfulness, and more people are using mindfulness to understand sustainability and the future of the planet. So it's very hopeful.
You also did mindfulness meditation with homeless people. What made you do it, and what did you gain from it?
It wasn't homeless people. It was people living in the inner city who are like sometimes without jobs or with very little money, and sometimes not speaking English. But it wasn't homeless people, but it was kind of sort of trying to bring mindfulness into the population of people who would not come to the UMass Medical Center, but they go to kind of clinics in the deep in the inner city of Worcester, and many of them don't speak English. You know, they speak many different languages, but many of them. So we taught in Spanish, and as well as in English. So some classes were only in Spanish. And the reason we did it was to show the universality of mindfulness, that it's not just for middle-class people or wealthy people, it's for anybody. And people responded really powerfully. Their anxiety and depression and various medical symptoms all dropped over the period of 8 weeks. And they kept practicing, when we did follow-up studies and so forth. So it was an attempt to show that this is not just for rich people or, middle-class people, but it's for people who are, in some sense, at the bottom of the social hierarchy, and that meditative practices, mindfulness, could be liberative in many ways for those people. And a lot of the time what it did was it led to them becoming more organized and being able to get jobs afterwards, because they began to develop other skills that would let them interview for jobs and so forth in ways that led to greater economic success. We also taught in prisons for many years. So we did that inner city clinic for 7 years. We also taught in prisons for about 7 years. And so with people who are like locked up in prison, which is a perfect place for meditating. It's like a monastery, but a very violent monastery in many ways. Violent, really violent prisons. And this was a way to actually deal with a lot of the violence and to become more nonviolent. And again, it had powerful effects on the people who practiced. And now there's all sorts of programs for mindfulness in prisons and mindfulness for young people in prison, juveniles, teenagers. We imprison more people in the United States than any other country in the world, including Russia or China. America loves to imprison people, and especially our younger people. So this is who often wind up in prison because they never got what they needed to get in the family for various reasons. And so it's a demonstration that mindfulness can be taught anywhere, and can be, if it's well taught, it can be of value to young people in ways that can help them find their true path through life.
Which one is more difficult to meditate between prisoner people and the Japanese people?
No problem. The prisoners, loved it, because you can find freedom inside prison. For a moment or two, you find peace. Prisons are very violent, very noisy, very aggressive, and they were able to sort of develop skills that, like, even in the midst of all the noise and the violence and so forth, to find moments of well-being, of peace, and reclaiming their lives in a certain way. It's also very effective training for if you are not in prison forever. Some people are in prison forever because of their crimes, but many people, 5 years, 10 years, then they get out, and very often they go right back in because they don't know how to relate to the outside world. So mindfulness can teach people how to not get back into prison, because you become in the habit of, in some sense, breaking the law. But if you find a greater lawfulness inside yourself, then you're not going to break those laws, and you will not fall back into the same communities of people who may have more criminal intent, so to speak, for whatever reason, but find people who have more in common with your desire to be free and not go back to prison.
Some people say that the center of Buddhism is now in the United States, and that American Buddhism has exceeded the original in the East. Buddhism has dimensions of enlightenment for fundamental changes, as well as more practical and rational dimensions for pragmatic use. How do you view the level of American Buddhism on both levels?
I never think about American Buddhism. In fact, I don't think about Buddhism that much. I think about Dharma. And there's no such thing as, there's just Dharma. It's not American, it's not Tibetan, it's not Korean, it's just Dharma. It's universal, it's human. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And as I said, all the different traditions are different doors into what to a first approximation is the same room. The room of awareness, the room of compassion, the room of the human heart when it knows itself. And all of the doors are beautiful. Like there's nothing more beautiful than song, Korean Buddhism. It's one beautiful door. Is it better than Tibetan, Mahayana, sort of Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism? It's just different. They had different architecture, different art forms, but you go into the practice, it's the same practice. It's the practice of the human heart. So I feel like I wouldn't say that now America is the seat of Buddhism or of Dharma. I think what's happening is that the Dharma is spreading out into the whole world. And just in time. I hope it's not too late, because we do need, as I was saying before, to wake up to our true nature as human beings, because we also are extremely destructive. We're extremely driven by greed, hatred, and delusion, the three kaleshas, or toxins. And so we all have greed, we all have hatred, and we all have delusion. It's when we don't know it that we become prisoners and slaves of our emotions and of our thoughts and of our likes and dislikes. And we're capable of, as I said, murderous, horrifying actions when we don't know ourselves. And when we do know ourselves, we're capable of tremendous compassion, tremendous beauty, tremendous creativity. And this is a kind of critical juncture on the planet for humanity, especially shifting from the, as I said before, from the analog, 13.8 billion years of analog evolution, and on this planet maybe 3 billion years of analog evolution leading to us and awareness. We need to really ask ourselves, before we give up the analog world and fall into this digital universe of generalized AI and robots and everything else, what's our role as kind of analog human beings? And have we completely understood what it means to be human ourselves, as we are? Or have we been missing superpowers that we actually are born with? The most important one, I would say, is awareness, mindfulness. It's kind of a superpower is free, and we all are born with it, but we don't have access to that superpower. So exercising the muscle and cultivating meditative awareness in whatever forms you do it, and there are a million different forms for cultivating mindfulness. They're all, again, different doors into the same room. And then we have greater access to the superpower. The superpower by itself doesn't do us any good if we can't have access to it and harness that energy for the sake of all beings and for the sake of wisdom and compassion.
You said in an interview, if I hadn't started meditating at 22, I might have died in my 30s. I wonder what you mean by that.
Like most young people, I was very wild when I was younger and somewhat self-destructive, you know, and so just the combination of having a motorcycle and being part of the kind of 1960s cultural revolutions of all kinds. If I hadn't found the Dharma, I really feel that, you know, I might have died, not by suicide, but just simply by accident, you know, because there were so many casualties in the 60s for all sorts of reasons. But for me, coming across the Dharma, first at MIT at a talk that Philip Kapleau gave. He came to MIT and gave a talk, and that was the moment that I got into the Dharma. I was 21 years old at the time, and I never stopped. I did a lot of things when I was 21, but I stopped them, most of them, but not the meditation practice. So first it was Kapleau, and then Kapleau wouldn't actually let me study with him because I was also studying with yoga teachers. And he said, no, you can't study Zen unless you give up the yoga. And I said, there's no way I'm going to give up the yoga. And he said, well, then you can't work with me. So I didn't know it for 40 years, but Kapleau himself was studying yoga. He was into yoga. He was a big yoga practitioner. I was about to meet him to celebrate. I was invited to celebrate the 40th anniversary of his Zen Center, the Rochester Zen Center in Rochester, New York, and which I don't remember the date that it happened, but 2 weeks before we were supposed to meet for the first time in like 40 years, he died. And so I gave my talk and celebrated the 40th anniversary. He was gone by then. And then I came back 10 years later and celebrated the 50th anniversary. And in the 50th anniversary, they gave me a present. The head of the Zen Center on the stage in front of like 700 people gave me a present. What they gave me was Philip Kapleau's harmonica. He used to play the harmonica in a kind of jazz band. And I now have his harmonica in my house. And I play it with my grandchildren. You know, it was Philip Kapleau, then Sonsanim, and then later I crossed paths with Thich Nhat Hanh in some very beautiful ways. I would say, although we didn't spend that much time together, that with Thich Nhat Hanh, it was more like we were friends who recognized each other rather than I was his student. And of course, ultimately my greatest teachers were, and still are, my wife and my children and my grandchildren, and when they were alive, my parents. So there's nobody who can't actually, when you are grounded in awareness, can't, in some sense, whether they know it or not, become your teachers. And I even wrote a book called Letting Everything Become Your Teacher. But I really bow to Seung San and Kapleau and Thich Nhat Hanh for the legacies that they left in the world. Really, really beautiful. And this has been going on for 2,600 years, from the time of the Buddha, an ongoing, unbroken transmission of lineage. And as you probably know, the great British historian Arnold Toynbee once said that the 20th century, the most important event that the 20th century will be known for is Buddhism coming to the West. Now, whether that's true or not, I think I would say it's way too early to tell. That we'll have to wait another 300 or 400 years to see what that story is. But I'm happy to be a tiny little wave on that ocean, along with all of you and everybody else who's working in the world to make it a better place.
You are Jewish. Jews are known for being highly intelligent and having a strong emphasis on education. They also have many Nobel laureates. I understand that the Israel-Palestine issue is not easily resolved. South Korea has also suffered more than 70 years of conflict with North Korea. It is so sad to see so many children and civilians die and suffer in the Israel-Hamas war. Isn't there a better choice than killing each other? Is the problem due to lack of mindfulness? Is it because they couldn't overcome their long-standing trauma? Is it because of selfishness? Is it because of the collusion between arms dealer and far-right politics? Your father-in-law, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, and you have both been involved in anti-war movements. What are your thoughts as you watch the current war in Israel?
It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And it's one of an infinite number of examples of how if you don't see the problem correctly and you don't diagnose the problem correctly, there is no solution to the problem. So these problems in, Palestine were really formulated a long time ago. The British Empire had a great deal to do with it. The Palestinians were moved out of their homeland to make room for Jewish people who had just experienced this horrifying Holocaust. And so the seeds were planted, and people have been talking for many years about like a homeland for the Palestinians, but what happened was the Palestinians got moved into Gaza and the West Bank, and then the Israeli settlers in the past 20 years have been grabbing all the mountaintops and the hilltops in the West Bank and making it almost impossible for there to be a reasonable two-state solution. So this is a kind of koan that is so difficult for humanity to solve. The killing absolutely has to stop. It never should have started. Of course, Hamas started it, and it was horrifying what Hamas did. And they did it to cause this kind of destruction and kind of reaction on the part of the Israelis. So it's one of those situations where if you don't take an orthogonal perspective, there's really no solution. It's just going to go on and on and on. The orthogonal perspective would be very challenging to do because nobody will get everything they want. But there's, the killing of innocent people and watching it every day on TV, babies, and seeing parents apprehend their dead children right there on the television screen is like, traumatic for the entire world. And so it's a demonstration that we're all part of this problem. It doesn't matter whether you're in Korea, in the United States, or in Europe, or Asia, or the Middle East. There will be no peace until we learn how to live together. And everybody's going to have to give up something. Everybody's going to have to give up something. How we're going to thread this needle, I don't know. But I am completely behind the Palestinians getting the recognition for their needs that they never ever got, and finding some kind of solution that frees all the Palestinians that are in Israeli prisons that nobody talks about, nobody ever knows about, including very young children and women. And what it's doing to the Israeli society is horrifying, because they're taking their young people and they're turning them into soldiers, but their soldiers are actually policing the Palestinians, and it's dehumanizing to them and to the Palestinians. So this is a prescription for disaster. For a long time there was no disaster because nobody cared. When this happens with Hamas and the horrifying murders that they engaged in, tearing down the wall and jumping in and stuff like that, they did it exactly to cause this kind of overreaction. So this is in some sense a koan for the Middle East, or the koan for Israel and the Arab surrounding nations. Do we want this disease to go on forever, killing innocent people for the sake of, nobody willing to recognize each other's humanity, and making, say, Israel a special case because it's not just a democracy, it's a Jewish democracy, which is seriously problematic because then it can't be a democracy and favor one particular religion at the same time. So there's like original paradox, original contradiction. I don't know how this needs to be worked out any more than anybody else, but we do, I think, have to find ways to stop the carnage immediately. We should have done it weeks ago. And then find a way to heal the generations of suffering that have been created since before Israel was a state. You mentioned Korea. It's the same with Korea. You've got the two Koreas, but it's really one people, right? But with, since 1954 or whatever it was, when the separation became permanent, it's like two different universes, two different planets. And there's, I'm sure, an awful lot of suffering because of the separation and the families and everything else. And yeah, we can live with it, right? You can live with it. We've lived with it for generations. But is there a way to actually, in North Korea, from everything I've read, is like a prison. It's like a prison. Gaza is a prison. They call it the world's largest open-air prison. But maybe North Korea is the largest open-air prison. So these are challenges. These are the most important challenges that humanity is facing at the moment. But it all has to do with the human mind when it doesn't know itself, and when there are special interest groups that are driving things in Israel and with the terrorists, where the poor Palestinian people actually just become pawns in the process rather than being given the power and the agency that they really need to live lives of dignity just like everybody else. There was also, there are people who are trying to bring mindfulness into the Arabic world because, the Muslim world has its own great wisdom traditions, like Rumi and Kabir and, sort of fantastic wisdom traditions. And there are some people who are trying to translate mindfulness into Arabic and bring the meditation practice into, sort of the space of the Palestinians, both the Palestinians living in Israel and the Arabs, and also, but it's like in its infancy, but it has the potential to be part of some larger unfolding where this inflammation, this horrifying inflammation, is finally addressed in a way that leads to, again, as I've been saying since the beginning, minimizing harm and maximizing well-being, not for one privileged group, not for one chosen people, but for everybody who has, a stake in that part of the world. This is the kind of koan for humanity right now. And you'll notice that now that this thing is going on in the Middle East, nobody talks about Ukraine and Russia anymore. It's like, oh, that's old. But you know, it's always like this, you know. I mean, and we never learn. You know, there was like the Russians in Afghanistan. The Russians, powerful, they lost. Okay, the Americans in Vietnam, we lost. Most powerful country in the world, we lost. Why? And it just goes on and on. Iraq, Afghanistan, we never learn that violence is not the way. Peace, goodwill, kindness, and a kind of moral strength is the way. It doesn't mean you kowtow to tyranny by any stretch of the imagination. But most of what we've been doing in terms of foreign policy actually feeds the tyranny rather than, you know, skillfully reduces it and turns things around like the martial art of Aikido might do. So we need to learn, in some sense, an Aikido for the body politic, for international disputes, a win-win situation where everybody gets some of what they need, even if nobody gets everything that they need, and then discover that what they most thought they needed, they probably don't need. What they most need is peace and the ability to live one's life, whether you call yourself this, that, or the other, doesn't matter. The fact is that we're all human beings, and that to me is like the most important point. Of course, I'll say one other thing, and that is, if you're in the arms manufacturing business, Korea is supplying a lot of the arms to Ukraine, you know, the shells and stuff like that. America, you know, is the biggest arms manufacturer in the world. You know, this is kind of partly the problem of capitalism. And so warfare is like good business, because you drop bombs, you need more bombs. You fire missiles, you need more missiles. It's like fantastic. It's a great business model for a very small number of people who are in the destruction business. But of course, they don't call it the destruction business. They call it the protection business. You know, that we're protecting ourselves from aggressors. But this is like really the koan for humanity to solve. Is it possible for there to be peace on earth? Or do we just talk about that during religious holidays or something like that? And we need to, in some sense, change the whole business model of what is profitable. If you could make peace profitable, maybe that would drive peace. Maybe capitalism could drive peace instead of driving warfare and hatred, or exploiting hatred, because we all are subject to greed, hatred, and delusion. But there should be laws about making it into a profitable business model. My father-in-law was a bombardier in World War II. So he dropped a lot of bombs on people as a young man. And that is what led him to actually reject that level of, you know, violence, and to devote his life to understanding, you know, the power of regular people to transform the world.
Before your insight.
Well, thank you for your questions. Very good questions. Very powerful questions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
감사합니다. Yeah.